you too are an immigrant, and that's all right.
Yeah.
Right. But our perspective is skewed, right? We know that the land of Colorado is worth $1.17 trillion. They can't even quantify water and agriculture. But at the same time, as an African American, I also grew up being told that Black people don't swim.
Thank you for watching. Please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Every like and subscribe is a free way to support us, expand our reach, and plant new ideas. Would you first take us back to just kind of your story? Give us the 30,000 foot view of kind of your path to today. Maybe starting with where you grew up and what maybe childhood was like for you.
Sure. So I was born in Northern Virginia, about 30 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. And we lived in a community that was one of the first suburbs in the area. And so we were surrounded by forests. And so some of my earliest memories are being in trees that I've climbed or being in the water. My mom was a lifeguard and my auntie was a diver. And so being in water and being in nature and nature-rich places was always something that was close to my heart. But at the same time, as an African American, I also grew up being told that Black people don't swim. So there was that cognitive dissonance in that journey of, I'm experiencing one thing, but I'm taught and exposed to a narrative that's not true to my existence. So again, that's, I guess, where education became my first love and career. Well, if everybody just knew, then we could all get along. And then, from my childhood and being in Virginia, I actually ended up going to middle school in Los Angeles and then high school in New York City. So I moved around a lot as a kid. And that really helped me to meet different people from different places around the world. So we were one of few Black families in Northern Virginia at the time, but moving to Los Angeles, as you can imagine, so racially and ethnically diverse, then New York City, similarly, really just exposed me to so many different people and languages and cultures and foods and respect as well and appreciation across socioeconomic. So, I'm both a big city gal and I also love nature-rich places.
And what brought you to Boulder?
I would say the classic story of I met a woman in yoga teacher training and she was born and raised in Boulder. And it was one of those month-long programs at Kripalu in Western Massachusetts. And she saw how much I loved being outside and we went on so many hikes in the lake and swam. And she said, you should really come visit. I was like, I don't know, girl. That's in the middle of the country.
Yeah.
Not a lot of ethnics around there.
It's true.
And she said, no, it's really beautiful. I've seen how you climb trees. You got to come climb some rocks with me.
Yeah.
And so I came out and I did.
Do you climb any trees today?
I do, although, just legally.
Yeah, what are the rules on that?
Oh, well, again, as a former commissioner for Colorado Parks and Wildlife, I recognize that, our trees are family and kin and not just playthings for us. And we are in relation. And because, we've designed and zoned things, now as a city council person, I have a whole new appreciation for zoning or understanding about zoning. That means, just kind of a love it to death is something that, we talked a lot about when I was on the commission for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. We have a lot of people who have moved to Colorado in the last 10, 15 years, and many of those people love the outdoors. And, if you're going to those same places and trails, sometimes they can get overworked and, we have to share and balance with wildlife and water and, soil and all of the different parts of our ecosystem that we're a part of. And so I'm just very mindful of the ways that I'm in relation and am I being overly consumptive or am I being, as I said, in kind of reciprocity?
How do you describe your relationship with nature?
Well, I am nature, so I would say I'm honored to be a natural being and, and also having a very spiritual experience. So I believe that all beings are sentient and have spirits and energy and the interconnectedness. And so now I make tree friends and I ask, like, can I give you a hug or can, and before I just run on up, I just, taught my little nibbling how to do that. And now when we go on hike, she said, oh, I think there's a tree over there. You want to go make a friend? I said, yeah, let's go make a friend.
I do the same thing. Do you offer them anything like any type of an offering?
Sometimes if I have something, but
Mm-hmm.
in general, I'm just asking
Yeah.
permission to be in their space and to do this exchange, right? Of,
Yeah.
they're taking in oxygen or carbon and they're bringing out, giving off oxygen. So just being in that relation and being aware of that relation, is something that I've been coming more and more into, over the years.
Mm-hmm. So you were on the board at Colorado Parks and Wildlife,
On the commission,
on the
yeah.
commission, and what does that look like? What was your role there?
Well, it was, as I mentioned, I grew up in nature-rich places, and I always loved being outside and hiking and biking, and then I moved here and started climbing and skiing and every way that I could potentially be engaged and involved in. And somebody put my hat in the ring and told me about the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission, and I honestly had no idea what they did before I got on it. I didn't realize that there was all these people that regulated when, parks and when we can go and what trails and trail maintenance. And so I went in on the parks utilization. But as you can imagine, we set regulations not only on our state parks, but also wildlife and wildlife management. So I learned a ton about herds and pronghorn and deer and um, elk and fishing and hunting and fishing and outdoor recreation were the core components of the oversight that we provide to the state.
That seems like a real bright spot in our government, the parks and wildlife.
There is definitely a long and shared ethic around preservation. And City of Boulder in particular, which is one of the reasons I moved here, was audacious pretty early on in U.S. history as it relates to the blue line. So if you look at the Flatirons of Boulder, for example, you'll notice there's not a lot of houses or built
Mm-hmm.
developments, up above there, with the exception of NCAR, which got an exception to
Mm.
be able to build there. The idea being the blue line, no municipal services are going to go above the blue line, so no water or energy or those kinds of things, trash removal, etc. And again, I think that there is that ethic of more so than a lot of other places of for wildlife and wilderness as well. Again, I also struggle with the debt we still owe to our tribes
Mm.
through the forged treaties and every broken treaty that we had therein,
Yeah.
as well as our indigenous peoples who may not be connected to our federally recognized tribes. So, on the one hand, two things can be true. On the one hand, I'm very grateful for a state that understands the responsibility of preserving land and ensuring that there is sufficient habitat for strong ecosystems inclusive of wildlife and water and those kinds of things. At the same time, I also have to reckon with the debt that is owed to our tribes and to the indigenous stewards of these lands. The fact that they're not at the table proportionately or even representatively or at all. And when it comes, there's no indigenous or tribal seat on the Colorado boards for parks and wildlife. There is a tribal council for the entire state, but as you can imagine, there's so many different things that they would have to
Mm.
weigh in on. My larger point is it matters who decides. And I'm grateful for the Coloradans, lawmakers who decided to make, and even City of Boulder, who decided to make sure that we are respecting and are mindful of preservation and conservation of public land. I'm also honoring and acknowledging that that public land is stolen, that we owe a debt, and that those stewards still are not at the decision making table when we're making some of the most important decisions about our present and our future.
Are there any names in Colorado that you'd love to see on that board? Or is there anybody that comes to mind? Or how might we support them to have a voice at the table?
Well, it's up to the governor, and we have a governor's election coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And that person nominates, I think there's somewhere around 350 state boards and commissions in Colorado
Oh, wow.
alone. I mean, there's a significant amount. But they really tee up and identify that first round, and then those people need to be confirmed by the Colorado legislature, the agricultural committee in particular. The whole body ultimately decides, but that committee has a lot of sway as well. So I say all that to say, what can we do? We can, ask our governor what roles does he anticipate tribes and indigenous people having in his cabinet and in his government, in our different state level agencies, and similarly at a city level, what are we doing? For example, the city of Boulder has tribal consultation, and there have been efforts over the years to strengthen that relationship, which I really appreciate and honor. And right, we're updating our 20-year plan. I didn't see land back in there. I don't see right. We're doing some incredible work as a community around food systems right now and agriculture. And I noticed in the Boulder and Broomfield's food security network, they have a new action plan, and in that they talk about land back for tribes for agriculture. And I love that communities already thinking about it. Certainly, the people of the Sacred Land, which is an incredible organization that worked on those TREC reports, which are reports that were commissioned to be able to begin to quantify the historical loss of land and water and minerals for tribes. So we know that the land of Colorado is worth $1.17 trillion. That's where they can't even quantify water and agriculture and how much land loss there was there, how much loss was there. We know it's around 500 billion, I think, for minerals. I did the back of the math, back of the envelope math on that for the 1.17 trill just for the land of the city of Boulder, and that's about 300 million. Now that assumes that every plot of land is the same, and we know that it's not, but that just tells you the scale, of the debt that we owe.
In other news, because of GMOs, monocropping, and soil depletion, Americans are not getting enough nutrients. That's why in 2018, I founded BeMicro, the first freeze-dried microgreens company in the US to help Americans get more natural nutrition in their diets. Microgreens are a phase in the plant's life when they're just 14 days old and naturally the most concentrated in vitamins, minerals, and unique antioxidants. Our microgreens are all grown here in the US and certified USDA organic and regenerative organic. We grow, wash, and freeze-dry them to extend their shelf life from 1 week fresh to over 1 year, allowing us to ship anywhere in the US without the worry of spoilage. We have 2 flavors: broccoli, backed by over 2,000 studies on sulforaphane for its powerful detox benefits, and a blend of broccoli, radish, and red cabbage, our most powerful detox formula that we've tested, giving you the most bang for your buck. Easily sneak these into any meal: eggs, pizza, pasta, or even your kids' mac and cheese. We have whole leaf, powder, and capsule options, so you can choose the way that works best for you. Use code PLANT15 to save at BeMicro.farm.
And not just the debt that we owe, but I also reflect back to the founding of this country and our United States Constitution, which drew heavily from the Great Law of Peace by the Iroquois Confederacy. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Tell me about it. I'm not familiar.
Oh, this
Please.
is very exciting. I wish I have a noun deficiency. I'm self-diagnosed. So I have a hard time remembering proper nouns sometimes, so bear with me. But the idea is that a few of the framers, and I feel like maybe Thomas Jefferson and maybe one of the Adamses, I'm not sure, but them, they went over and they were, they're in negotiations. These folks have known about about the tribes here, obviously since, the first, Europeans came and started sailing. They've been in relationship with tribes. Well, many of them had come to admire sections and components of the Great Law of Peace. Sections like checks and balances. So that's something that we incorporated into the U.S. Constitution. Another is representative government, right? They had different tribes. I believe there's 10 tribes. Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm terrible with the propers of it all. But
Same, I'm not sure exactly.
I know, and I've read about it so many times. Mohawk are one of them. They're the keepers of the Eastern Door. But anywho, so it was checks and balance. It was representative government. Were definitely components that we brought into our U.S. Constitution. There's 2 in particular that we did not. The first is rights of nature, right? I mean, how would our entire U.S. history and policy decisions been different if we had seen water as a relative and not water as a resource.
Yeah.
Right. That whole that mind shift, right, is really where the direction that we're trying to move back towards right now, because we see what happens when we put human needs above every other part of our ecosystem, and that law really tried to help balance that. The other, which I love, is the role of the clan mother. The clan mother is the one who identified the leader of the tribe, and they were the ones who can remove a leader of a tribe. And again, I imagine if we were in that, if we had taken the entire, and we replicated that component, would we be in the situation that we are in right now with the president that we have leading? And I believe the answer would be no.
Now, in indigenous cultures, women were more
Exactly.
kind of in the chief leadership roles in tribes.
Well, they sometimes so there might be male chiefs, but then there's kind of like a clan of mothers, and they kind of, there's a balance, that checks and balance that I was talking about before. And there are definitely more matriarchal, like one leader, but I would say just matriarchal as it relates to being in relation, as opposed to more patriarchal, which is more of a dominance, power control kind of thing, is where I would lay that relationship.
And where does your inspiration for this indigenous wisdom, indigenous connection come from?
Relationship. So I grew up, as I mentioned, in Northern Virginia, and I can just say that I vividly remember having to make the headdresses for Thanksgiving, and doing the handprint of the turkey, and reenacting the beautiful dinner that the pilgrims had, and with the settlers, and that was a very positive thing, and everybody was really happy, and I knew that wasn't what it was, but that's how I was taught, and how it was reinforced. And that opportunity to really be in meaningful relation came when I did the Ship for World Youth, which is sponsored by the Japanese government, and it's to further international relations for 20 to 30-year-olds, kind of like Semester at Sea, but it's more state to state, not or government to government, not school to school. A member of the Mohawk community who was in the Canada delegation, and we became very good friends. And on the ship, she actually hosted a documentary of a short film about her community, and how they closed off a bridge because there was some challenges with their sovereignty and the Quebec government in the 70s. And one of the ways that got reconciled was the community hosted a powwow to help to bridge the relationships. And she invited everybody from the ship to come to the powwow. Wow. And I did it like 5 years in a row. That I moved into Montreal, which is not far from Ganawage. But I'm grateful for those relationships of meeting tribal representatives, and in Canada they're called First Nation, or they call themselves First Nation. It was just again, to be taught and read the word savage, and then to actually be in community that is thriving, that is self-determining and has agency, and are leaders in so many different ways, and helping people restore and reclaim and rematriate, just changed my worldview. Yeah. And it made me find the courage to be able to reconcile being both the oppressed and the oppressor, right? Even though, as an African American, I am, all of those things can be true, right? I can still be owed a debt. I can still be waiting on 40 acres, and it's still stolen land. It will forever be stolen land until I live on it, and I recreate on it, and I love and laugh on it, and with it rather. And I recognize and I honor that I have a debt. And so even on council, we're talking about our new 20-year plan, as I mentioned, and just coming full circle on that. Where's the land back? Where are the commitments that we're going to make? It's more than just deepening our understanding or making an acknowledgement. How are we holding ourselves accountable? How are we getting in right relation? How are we atoning? There's this great film called The Color Purple. It's one of my faves. And there's a scene where the protagonist, who has been abused and all of the different things over the years, and is finding the ways to reclaim her life and her agency. And she's trying to separate from this abusive partner, and she looks at him at the table and says, you know, until you do right by me, everything you even think about is going to fail.
Hmm.
And that's kind of how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Just karmically.
Mm-hmm.
Like, until we do right by Mama Earth,
Yeah.
we're going to keep seeing wildfires. We're going to keep seeing floods. We're going to keep seeing these very
Drought.
these very, you know, we humans have been extreme, right, in our efforts to control,
Yeah.
to dominate, to be in charge, not just as a country, but as a people across the world, across time. And I just feel that it's personal. It's a debt that I owe. It's a responsibility that I have, and it's a healing that I need to make. And I invite others to do the same.
And how might someone take a first step into that path, into that healing?
So similarly, you know, because of the relationship I had in Ganawage and with the people there, it made me want to learn more and get more engaged with our indigenous and our tribal community here. So we have the Harvest of All First Nation here in the city of Boulder. In Boulder County, they have a plot in Gorin Gardens where they're always looking for volunteers, obviously donations. But I just say the volunteerism and being a part of, right? You know, our community has hosted a corn festival annually. The last one they did it more as a workshop, but because of some of the things that are happening around our world right now, we need to be more mindful of around that. But you know, those kinds of public offerings are always there. There's an incredible danza group in Boulder as well, Aztec danza group that is often at different festivals and ceremony. I'd say the other invitation is in addition to not only understanding the land that you're on and the tribes who inhabited it in the past and present and being in relation, I would also invite people to look in the mirror. Where's your indigeneity? Go back, right? The city of Boulder, we just got a welcoming certification, and a part of that is to welcome immigrants. And I thought, oh, that's wonderful. Well, oh, you mean like recent, right? I mean, I made the distinction because, I mean, unless your peoples are from Turtle Island, you too are an immigrant, and that's all right.
Yeah.
Right. But our perspective is skewed, right? The root systems are broken when people lean into whiteness or lean into a race that's make believe versus, you know, an ethnic line that's real, that's tangible. And I think that there's a healing that needs to happen there as well. I know, at least for the work I do outside of the council with Mukuyu Collective, has been a place and space where I can start to balance not only the policy work, but some of the cultural work. Going back to MLK, I changed the law, but I didn't change the culture. And we know that culture eats policy and eats process and eats laws very quickly. And so how do we change the culture? And so being able to, you know, whether it be film or music or scenarios or monologues, right? Like, what are some ways that we can learn, unlearn, and relearn so that we can better align and activate?
What are some of the lessons that you've learned through indigenous teachings?
Well, the hierarchical structure and really being mindful of, you know, a hierarchy versus that a hierarchy is not the only way that you can lead, that there are other ways, you know, because we talk about consensus, but when I'm actually in rooms in like a strategic planning session, for example, and we talk about consensus, I don't actually, what results is not what I think consensus should be, right?
Okay.
I don't feel like, you know, it's kind of like the lesser of two evils sometimes in the consensus process, and can be set up, you know, because you got to come out of it with something. And unfortunately, I've seen it go where, you know, these are the binaries and we got to pick between these two.
Okay.
That's not, I'm not, you know, if you kind of like, not torture, but torture, like if you work at people long enough, you can get them to move around a little bit, oftentimes, depending on their, you know, it's like juries and jurors, and, you know, why gerrymandering is a thing, or, you know, how people, you know, their whole law firms that are designed to try and figure out how do you get the person who, you know, we're a species, just like other species that can be trained and manipulated. And
Yeah.
I'd say that's one of the hardest parts about being human is how human we can be.
Mm. And what issues are you passionate about helping to kind of steward the committee to even speak about?
So right now, I'd say, well, one, I ran on climate and cultural resilience,
Mm.
and that remains my focus area. So, from a climate perspective, I continue to advocate for water because they don't have a vote at the table. So, I want to make sure that every droplet feels represented.
Mm.
It's funny, the first question that we had at the last study session on the Boulder Valley comprehensive plan, the first question was, do you feel like the community needs have been met based on the feedback that we've received? And I said, well, I think most of our community needs have been met, but there were two that hadn't. The first was our tribes and indigenous. I didn't feel like they were sufficiently represented in the data that was provided, and then the results of the policies that had been identified. And then the second was, I don't see our sufficiently our water and our soil. Even though water is mentioned, and I do believe our water team does an absolutely excellent job, and I don't feel like we're doing enough to ensure that all of our policies are a climate benefit for our water, for example. Similarly with our soil, I'm so excited that there's a food system section to our plan, to the draft plan, and that has never happened before. Ag was kind of like 3 things in at the sub community level, and you could do like agroterics, which is great, but that's not going to be a food system. And so I do want to honor the incredible efforts to get us to this point. And if food is a utility, which I believe it is, I need to see the same level of investment as we do to other utilities like our water systems and transportation and those kinds of things. So I know that we're not at the budget phase yet, but it's certainly something on my mind. So that's the climate side, is water and agriculture and food systems. The other, for the cultural pieces, are human rights. And the city of Boulder has an incredible human relations ordinance, and it talks about housing and employment. But when I asked about how do we ensure those things are happening, what data are we using, that's what I learned. Not all data is available for certain things, or there's only one staff person and they have a lot that they would need to track in order to be able to do that. And so, and then also our city only has a certain amount of authority, and states have other types of authority. So sometimes if somebody is discriminated in a certain way, they may choose to go and apply and give their petition to the state because there's more teeth that the state can do around that issue versus the city. So again, our numbers might be off because there might be people who are choosing not to file. So one, just making sure that if we have these beautiful anti-discrimination laws, we have a way to make sure that we're holding people accountable around them. Mass surveillance continues to be top of mind. I'm grateful that the city manager has decided to create a clause in the flock contract that it's only 30 days. So it's a monthly contract, and they've opened up bid for a different consulting or contractor to support the license reading. So I'm grateful for that and that that's happening. And I still have no illusions about an Exome. AXIOM, I think, is another company outside of Flock, which is the company that we've been actively pushing against because they've lied in court about what they do. And
Flock has. Yeah.
yes, and then there's also just is my understanding, and then again, we know that their data has been breached and used, and if we're capturing data and we can't ensure the safety of that, I don't think that we should be engaged in that technology. I don't care how effective and efficient it is if it's leaving our community members vulnerable.
Yeah. I did see in Denver that the city council voted against Flock, and the mayor, through a loophole, as long as it's under $500,000, did a contract with Flock for $499,000, and he was able to push Flock through in Denver. Does the Boulder City Council get to vote on Flock, or is that a what's it called? The city operator?
Yeah, the city manager.
The city manager.
Is so. So it was my understanding that the Denver mayor did try and veto that. However, it was my understanding that the auditor or somebody came out from finance saying, no, you can't do that. So they ended up not being able to do Flock, and they're trying to vote on if they want to go with Exium, which is a comparable company, which also has some challenges with some of their data security. So I think it's still game on for Denver.
Okay.
As far as the city of Boulder is concerned, unfortunately, previous council gave the authority of policing to the city manager, and no, I would love to find out more of the story of how that happened. But that also means that the city manager is the one who makes the decision about policing contracts, including our police union contract. And so, as I mentioned, due to her incredible ability to respond to public need and interest, and the evidence and valid and reliable evidence that has been provided, is why they made the decision to not just renew it for another year or two, but just to do it for 30 days and reopen the bid. There's also a task force that the city manager started on artificial intelligence and data security, which will have another place for us to do some further investigation on the ways that we want to police and policing and public safety. All of those pieces are absolutely critical. And then lastly, on the human rights piece is our Boulder Police Oversight Panel. I'm an inaugural member of the Boulder Police Oversight Panel, which, as you may recall, was an outgrowth of Zaid Atkins, who is who was a student or graduate now of Naropa University. He was doing his job, picking up trash by his community.
That went
That's
viral.
the
I've
one.
seen that video.
That's
Yes.
the one. And then the police came and were aggressive and put their hands on the guns,
Yeah.
and it was just terrible.
Yeah.
And
And he tried to hold the line for
and
himself,
he really,
and they just bulldozed him.
really held the line beautifully. And then
Yeah.
the owner of the building came and vouched for him. Now, interestingly enough, because I remember everything is on camera, the white landowner comes. He says, "Oh yes, this is my employee. This is a part of his internship for his school." No one ID'd or asked him for
Yeah.
ID, but they were asking Zaid for ID that he lived in the house, but they didn't ask the man, "Give me ID that you own the building," which
Wow.
again, that what I like to call the black tax. Right? When people say the black tax, that's an example where we got to do this little bit of extra. We always got to do a little bit of extra in order to just have fair treatment. You can't just exist. That's never enough.
Yeah, there's so many things we can get into here. I'm curious, why do you think there is a lack of diversity in Boulder?
I need people to think about who was coming here in 1859. Oftentimes, I think we're sold the story of like the homesteaders who came over, and part of that is true, right? There's a grain of salt in all the tall tales. But when you think about banking, transportation, housing, construction, Georgia, Virginia, Mississippi, Texas, these are slave states. So again, you have, I will also say that there were Africans on Turtle Island before the Europeans came in the 1600s or 1400s. But so I just want to lift that up there. However,
Turtle Island is what indigenous called North America today.
Yes, the Americas. Yeah, the entire Americas. Yeah, make a turtle. Thank you. Sorry. But again, it matters what we call things. So anyway, but coming to Turtle Island, and again, as I said, yes, Europeans came out, the Irish from the famine, right? That's real. I honor that. The Scottish, similar story. They don't call it the Scottish famine, but a similar technique was used to push people of Scottish descent off their lands by the English for a variety of different reasons. And so many of them, like Andrew Carnegie, for example, came to the Americas. But I just have to remind people who was coming and making decisions about our community. And unfortunately, many of those people brought that slaveholder mentality, even though enslavement of Africans was not legal here. Segregation was, however. I also go back to, so that's the race and ethnicity line. There's also an economic line. The city of Boulder, or the town of Boulder, when it was established, the land was about $1,000 a lot during a time when most families were making $500 a year, if they were being paid at all. Remember, 1859. Enslavement didn't end until 1865. So, you know, and even the Homestead Act, right? People were coming, and, you know, those Homestead Act leases were, you know, primarily for white European families. So, again, I can honor that they were fleeing, and I can honor that the land was stolen, and that the economic situation decisions that were made really boxed out not only racially and ethnically diverse people, but also any kind of socioeconomic stretch.
This podcast is brought to you by BeMicro, organic freeze-dried microgreens for easy, everyday nutrition. Sprinkle them on any meal and enjoy the benefits. Shop now at BeMicro.farm and use PLANT15 to save 15% off your next order.
The other piece is when you create a state for our union, so bizarro, but this is true, you needed to determine there had to be a state hospital and a state university and a state jail when you established a new state. And so when the state of Colorado was founded, they needed to decide where was the jail going to be, or the state prison going to be, and where was the state university was going to be. And the two areas that were in consideration were Boulder and Canyon City, which is south of Colorado Springs.
Okay.
Because there was mining there and there was mining here. Okay. So they were deciding, and spoiler alert, Boulder got the university, which is why we're the flagship, you know, of the University of Colorado system, and Canyon City got the state prison. Yeah. But again, because of that decision, right, we, the city of Boulder and Boulder County region area, got professors, and we got students, and we got, you know, and that really
We got the good times.
also, and at that time, non-white people were not eligible for those jobs.
Oh, okay.
And even when, you know, I went to a beautiful ceremony for a bench for the Nylons, Charles and Margaret, our African American couple. The husband was the first black professor, the wife was the first black librarian, and during the ceremony, people who knew them were talking about how they used to host black CU students because they would get accepted into CU Boulder, but they wouldn't be allowed to live on campus.
Wow.
Or they weren't allowed to eat in certain places. And so the Nylons would host them for lunch. And, you know, so I give that as an example. The other example is the city of Boulder, we did not have official redlining, which is to say specific areas that were codified in law that were either allowed to be sold to non-white families or non-white people versus areas that were only or exclusive to white people. We did not have an official code, but we had custom. It was a custom that black and non-white people could only live in certain areas in our city, like Gross Grove, for example, is one area in our city where only, you know, where black people primarily lived. And that's oftentimes in that little area why there's a lot of little cottages on the property. Because, you know, when people got married, their families got bigger, they couldn't go anywhere else. So then they would build these. So it's interesting now because people are talking about ADUs, which are the auxiliary dwelling unit, as a mechanism to address the affordability issues. So if anything, in closing on on diversity in our city, the irony is we are now replicating systems or replicating workarounds around because now the disproportionate impacts that once affected marginalized community, I guess the margins are getting bigger and it's starting to swallow up more members of our community. Again, if anything, I'm hopeful that that gives us the courage to make a new pie instead of trying to fix a broken one.
Any insights on the demographics of Boulder? My understanding is maybe there's about 110,000 residents, and maybe close to half of them are college students.
So it was my understanding, I thought we were around 102. I don't know where that number's coming from, or 106, but I mean, to
Mm-hmm.
nickel and dime, yeah, in that range.
Mm-hmm.
It was my understanding 30% were students of
Okay.
that. Although the number of students has been increasing, of university students, the number of people who are 65 and up are our fastest growing demographic
Oh,
is
wow.
65 and up. Yeah,
Why do you think that is?
money, affordability.
Sure.
So who can afford to live here? And this
Yeah.
goes back to the tipped working thing,
Yeah.
right? This is why we can't only have conversations about a minimum wage without one about a maximum wage. I mean, that's why I don't like the minimum wage conversation.
Hmm.
It's like, why am I only talking about one part?
Mm-hmm.
It's like I'm talking about one tire on the car.
Hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, make it a little bit, give it some more air, give it less air. That's one tire. You're still going to be off route if we don't address the other four tires.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, I feel about, when we see, so the other side of that scale is we're seeing an increase in people that are over 65, and we're seeing a decrease by people who are under 16,
Okay.
right? Because, I get older
They're not
people,
having kids.
and they don't have big families.
Yeah.
Many of them are coming to retire.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another, we're seeing a growth in retirement communities and retirement facilities or expansions of existing retirement facilities, over by Sanitas,
Oh, yeah.
older living.
What was
elder
that
living.
before? Like a
It
hospital
was a
or?
hospital. I'm
Yeah.
a breast cancer survivor, so I got my physical therapy there, and it
Oh,
was a
wow.
really beautiful place
Aw.
to get physical therapy. So it's really sad, and it's a part of the whole not sanitarium project. That's why Sanitas is named Sanitas.
Oh, I don't
It's
know.
like the Chautauqua movement. Oh, so there's a Chautauqua movement in like the 20s or something for like health and wellness. And so that area, which was Chautauqua, which was developed by Texas teachers. I do this air quote thing because I just need everybody to remember. Like, there was never a time that teachers got paid sufficiently in the United States. Never, ever, ever. So if you're buying property at that scale of Chautauqua scale, something else is coming. You're getting your mother's money somewhere else. But anyway, let's go with the Texas teacher thing. But that area, and then Sanitas, Sanitas, the trail, Mount Sanitas, is also part of that sanitarium thing. But basically, that movement was around health and wellness, and I think it was somehow connected to the tuberculosis thing, because a lot of folks that got tuberculosis on the East Coast were told to come to the American West because we're at a higher elevation, so the air is a little cleaner and drier, so it helps with when people were recovering from tuberculosis.
What is the state of our air quality in Boulder? I guess what I think of it is we're in a little bit of a bowl, so the pollution can kind of stick here. Is that true?
Well, I will say when I moved here, I did not see the pollution that I see now.
Really?
So remember I had said I went to middle school in Los Angeles, so I know smog.
Mm.
I didn't understand when I first got there. I was like, what is this? Why is the morning all like this? Where's the sun? And then the sun starts coming up at around 11. It happens in San Francisco too, where I've also lived. So
Me too.
I just share that to say when I saw it starting to happen here, I was like, if this happened like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I just noticed there were less sunny days. I just was starting to know there's more gray days. Oh, that's really interesting. And now I'm starting to notice like that line, the smoggy kind of line that settles and then it burns off a little bit and then it's sunny. Could have knocked me over with a feather when I started seeing that. So anyway, I say all that to say I'm concerned about the toxins in our air, in our environment. I don't even want to just say air. It's in our water, it's in our soil, it's in our clothes, it's in our food. We under-regulate in certain areas like corporate accountability, and we over-regulate in other areas, right? We're seeing disproportionate policing, right? Who gets stopped? It typically is people of color in a car, right? But I'm watching people, on these little scooter bikes that aren't even supposed to be. If you're not pedaling, you're not supposed to be on the sidewalk. I have never seen anybody. No shade to our police department. I love y'all and everything. I'm just saying, I ain't never seen nobody. And I have story after story of somebody who's of color, who's a homeowner here, who's been stopped by the police.
Yeah.
You know, just cause. So, and this isn't, you know, again, this isn't anecdotals. There's evidence around these things. And again, this is where I'm hopeful that our city council and all of those, you know, again, at every single level, we are holding people accountable with the dollars that we spend. We're holding people accountable by what we look at, by what we listen to, who we listen to. That's all deciding who's going to have access, who's going to get our energy, and who's not.
Well, I'm feeling a lot of passion here from you and knowledge to back this up. Thank you for a little bit of the history on this. This is all new to me. Thank you.
So geeked out. Oh, sorry, but we're on this intergenerational continuum. You know, but I will also say I work in policy. I work in education. I'm a historian. I love to connect the dots across space and time. You know, I could be really angry about why isn't there more Black representation and but I know our history. Then there's actually a Colorado Black equity study that's happening right now to try and quantify, similar to the Trek reports for our tribes and our indigenous. There's another group of folks at History Colorado that's working on trying to figure out how the legal frameworks and customs around housing and banking and education and criminal justice, you know, what were the impacts for Black Coloradans. I appreciate that work is happening now, and there's an economic analysis component of that, so that recommendations are coming out that seek to repair, as I said, until we do right by all of those that were pushed in the margins for another dream. Everything we think about is going to fail.
Where does your passion to run for city council come from?
We stand on the shoulders of giants. It's my responsibility. You know, I appreciate the No Kings protests, right? The thing that Nas McGraw has been, ain't nothing changed with the quarterly protests. You come out one day. I think of the bus boycotts. That was 381 days. For 381 days, they did not use the public bus system, which is how they primarily got around. They had to coordinate 350 cars every day to get everybody where they needed to go.
Who's they? Who are we?
The people in the Black community and their allies who were boycotting in Mississippi and Alabama, and you know, they would boycott the buses in Montgomery. The Montgomery bus boycott in particular was 381 days. And so I always ask, like, what are we willing to sustain? What are we willing to sacrifice for 381 days so that we could be a stronger union? That also took a coordination of food, as you can imagine, right? And moving food around, because people would drive to get food. So they would also have to move food around. And we're seeing the invitation for that depth of community networking now. You know, as we're watching our federal administration wreak havoc on the systems that had been trying so hard to reform. And it's going to require us to weave in deeper as a community and not just buy our way out. In COVID, we bought our way out. You know, I had a good friend in Granby during that time, and I would go in their grocery stores. I'd be like, Dad, where y'all food at? Because they go in the grocery store here, there's food in there. Also, we have multiple grocery stores to choose from. Oh, I don't want King Super, I can go to Whole Foods. Oh, I don't want Whole Foods, I can go to Natural Grocery. Oh, I don't like Natural Grocery. I can go to Ideal Market. Oh, I don't like Ideal, I can go to... Come on. Come on. And yet, this time is different, because this time it's not just about a pandemic or a health crisis. It's a poly crisis, right? I'm watching the Middle East oil fields get blown up, right? I'm watching the Strait of Hormuz get closed and significantly impact oil prices that always should have been high, because the cost has always been high. It's just who had to bear it. Ain't a moment oil was cheap. Oil always been expensive. It just wasn't expensive to us in the same way, and now it will be. But that'll force us to make changes that we were unwilling to make before. What can happen now under the pressure. Where the diamonds at? It's diamond making time. It's composting time. And that's where I get excited about the opportunity. That's why I'm excited and driven to run and represent, because I know what happens when we're not at the table. You know, if people were equal and had equal say and rights and all the things, and we had the same makeup of decision makers, all right, well, then I'd be a little bit more willing for them to stay. But in every single area, there is a disproportion by race or gender or class. There's enough food to feed the world. What's the problem? The problem is us. So the invitation is us.
What type of impact is Boulder seeing from federal decisions? NCAR comes first to mind.
Yeah, that was rough.
Maybe start there. What's the state of NCAR? You know, it was, I think the White House labeled it as something climate alarmism, and is shutting down not just like a national, you know, extreme weather tracking facility, but like worldwide, like leader in climate tracking. Do I have that right?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct. Now, remember what I said about our federal government and the stewardship that they had, the conservation ethic, and some of the opportunities, but also some of the challenges of that. One, a direct impact is what you shared around NCAR, NIST, the Department of Commerce. I'm also reminded that that was all made possible because a group of business owners in the city of Boulder bought that land and then invited the feds, because they heard that the federal government was looking for a place to site the Department of Commerce building. So that's number one. That all came through because of relationship. And Alabama was always mad about that. So that's important because Alabama wants the space thing, and you know, so there's some old debts that we're having to face there. But I just put that on the side. Anyway, I will say one of the more promising things that I've seen from this latest brouhaha is the University of Colorado, Boulder, stepping up and saying and starting to work with other universities and partners to say, we'll run it. So that could potentially be an alternative. I know that our representative in Congress, Congressman Joe Neguse, has been working very hard. But this isn't a logical decision, as you know, that we're making right now. These are emotional and relational decisions that are made. These are power decisions that are being made. They are not about, is 1 + 1 2? Is it a good idea to have a weather system and station and the research? Yes. No one is disputing that. That is not the question.
Especially as weather is getting more extreme.
That is not the question.
Yeah.
The question is, who gets to make decisions about our nation? And when administrations like the kinds that we have now, who want to limit public participation, let's say, in order to do that, I need to limit information that's available, which means I need to tear down those kinds of systems. So one, people need to stop thinking logically, because this is not a logical conversation that we're having as far as like, should humans live? How can we make sure humans live? Yeah. Then I would say yes to that. But if I was asking the question, how can I control more of what happens in this country, then I can see how that would need to be out of play, because it makes people more vulnerable. And I'm going to need to lean on, because I have less information. So I'm leaning on.
Okay.
I'm in the dark more.
Makes us more dependent on those in power when our knowledge is being taken away.
Exactly. Oh. However, this is one of Boulder's strengths, being a knowledge community, and remember the first university and all the things. And so this is where we have to fight. And, you know, Boulder's good at fighting for things. And this is, I think, one of the, again, unintended consequences or benefits of this has been a stronger weave across our communities. So our science community is talking more to our tech community, is talking more to our, right, in ways that we had into our public education and education and university systems in ways that we potentially hadn't before. And it's making us really stand up and fight for the kind of economy that we want to have, and the role that we want to play in, particularly the science and technology areas. I'll also say, what was the original question on that? Sorry.
What's the impact from federal decisions on Boulder?
So one is the in-car and science, and just in general, the assault, because the city of Boulder is also just a leader and a partner on climate issues, not just in the city of Boulder and the county of Boulder, but in the region, across the state, across the country. I mean, we are a part of many international initiatives and efforts. And so if anything, I'm grateful for the relationships that we all that have been established outside of the federal government, because those are the things that are going to really hold us and root us during these more turbulent times. So again, I think that it's unfortunate that we'll have to lean more on even the philanthropic community, because the federal government was financing, for example, transportation. Nobody does a transportation project. Those are 30-year projects sometimes. That's going to take a federal role. But, we want our rail system, and I think we will find a way to make that a reality, whether or not the feds want to be involved or not. So again, I think it's making us fight, and it is having a negative impact, not just on the science and tech, but I think of housing is another area in addition to transportation. Of course, SNAP, that was, I mean, the fact that we got to continue, as I mentioned, we have enough food to feed the world. So that's just real agitating that that's even on the table as a consideration. But it's also a failure of our governments across the board, that our food systems are in the peril that they're in right now. So, again, it will and has already had a significant impact. I think it will continue to have an impact on us. And to me, the invitation is always, what can happen now that couldn't have happened before? That's all we can do, is respond to what is.
And how can the citizens of Boulder, or maybe anyone in any town, get involved or get educated? Or there's these rallies, but how effective are those? I don't know. Like, where do you see the real grassroots strength, power coming from?
I always go back to the mirror, because I believe that you have the most control over yourself and the actions that you make. And so, and asking yourself the three questions, and I've seen them in a variety of different ways. The latest has been in the "What If We Get It Right?" Is a book that what is the woman's name, called "What If We Get It Right?" And it's basically about climate optimism, and for every problem that is identified, and they identified many climate problems, they had a list of climate solutions or approaches that one can use for that. But anyway, in this book, they also had the three circles, or ask the three questions, which is like, what are you good at? What does the world need? I forgot. And then, what do you have time and space to offer? And I think, like, finding that wheel,
That overlap.
yeah, finding the place where those things intersect is really, really powerful. Because somebody said, oh, not somebody, it was Ella Baker. She said, you don't need strong leaders when you have strong people. And I just come to that and say, when I looked at, okay, I love being outside. I am really good at putting together accountability systems, and I've got time to volunteer and be on the commission for Colorado Parks and Wildlife. I'm going to put my hat in the ring. Or, there's obviously tons of different volunteer opportunities. I think of for younger people, they're in their 20s. There's a great organization called Climatique, and they work on a variety of environmental justice issues. I think of Once and Future Green, which is a Black and Indigenous led and Latina led organization that does an incredible amount of work on environmental justice and policy and air, and making sure we're climate ready, or resilience hubs, all kinds of different ways. But honestly, it's about moving away from this mindset of rugged individualism and charity, and moving towards that relational, reciprocal, I'm in relation with the water, like I'm in relation with my sister or my brother. What do I need to do to make sure that we have a healthy relationship with each other, right? And it's more than me just going and cleaning the trail once a month, right? Something deeper than that happens when I'm in that relation with others. So to me, as I said, it's one, being in relation with yourself, and really having some of those hard conversations on, how am I a climate benefit in the way I live my life? How am I community benefit? Who am I connected to? Who am I spending time with? But there's just so many different ways to engage and get involved. and all of them need more people and more skills and more energy. And again, another bizarre offset of the federal funding retraction in a variety of different areas, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility being one of them, means that there's more weight on the philanthropic community. And so they're being, asked to contribute more and to move in their endowments and things like that. But the bottom line is the whole nonprofit complex shouldn't even exist. We pay enough taxes to be able to meet the basic needs of our community members and then some. And when you look at people's budget, and this is why another reason that I'm grateful that I have a seat at the decision-making table, when I look at our investment portfolio and I see, more than 50% of our investment portfolio investing in things that are against our core values, whether that be health and wellness, where we invest in a sugar tax, but we have a sugar tax, but we're invested in like PepsiCo. We have a climate emissions reduction goal, but we're invested in Toyota, right? Like these
And
things.
Microsoft and Caterpillar, and you've
Well, I was
been
building to that.
okay.
But I was just trying to help people see like it's not just the war making piece, which we're also invested in, like Microsoft, Caterpillar. But then we also let Caterpillar build our schools. I watched them build this school right here. That's the same company that is destroying homes in Palestine and in other places illegally. There's no corporate accountability.
So you were the only one on the city council to vote to divest from some of these companies that Boulder's invested in. Is that right?
Yes, it is. But I wasn't the only one to, originally my ask was to revisit our entire investment portfolio, and try and align it with our values. And I called it values aligned investment. And I got 2 other votes for that one. There were 3 votes on that one. But it wasn't enough to pass.
Yeah.
And so then I had to come up with there was some new evidence. So I was able to ask for us to revisit that. And I only got my vote that second time.
Does it ever feel lonely?
Yes. But I know I'm not alone. And it goes back to who has the ability to sit at the table and make those decisions. And right now, the city of Boulder City Council, we make about $10 an hour for 20 hours a week of work. Who can afford to do that? And it's a popularity contest on who can afford to do that. Yeah. And I believe that if there was more socioeconomic stretch and representation, if there was more race and ethnic stretch, if there was just more diverse lived experience, we might have come up with a different conclusion. But yet the work still stands. We didn't make the decision. It's still on the table. It was sad.
Now, is there 5 seats up for, I don't know all the terms, renewal on the council this year?
So re-election, it's 4.
Okay, plus the mayor.
Wait, is it 3 in the mayor? Hold on.
I think it's 4 in the mayor.
Is it 4 in the mayor?
Yeah.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, 4 in the mayor.
This podcast is brought to you by BeMicro, organic freeze-dried microgreens for easy everyday nutrition. Sprinkle them on any meal and enjoy the benefits. Shop now at BeMicro.farm and use PLANT15 to save 15% off your next order. Is there, now I know people don't have to announce yet, and I'm not asking you, but is there anyone that you're aware of that you endorse, that you would love to see on the council?
No one who has come out publicly yet.
Yeah. And people probably won't be coming out publicly for a while still. Typically August for a November election.
Yeah, last year, people started coming out and making themselves known around June.
Okay.
Which was interesting. Usually there's some word on the street, but, people had websites even up in June, which I don't know how I feel about that. But yeah, it would be August. So, but there are definitely some folks that I'm excited to hear are interested in exploring, or who are in the exploratory phases, particularly those we have no representation on the east side of our town, for example. Most everybody lives on the west side. Most of us live in the southern part of Boulder, and so I would love to just see some more geographic representation. There's a lot of new housing developments that are happening on the eastern side by the golf course, and so to have some representatives from that area, I think will be absolutely critical.
What do you think will be the important topics that will be campaigned on this year?
Housing is always going to be an issue. There's a group of folks that want to add more housing into Area 3, which is in North Boulder, land that was bought in the 90s. And so I think that's gonna be a big issue. We're in, I think, stage 2 of 3 for deciding whether or not we'll turn that Area 3 property into a service area that would be allowed to have water and those kinds of things. So I think that's going to be a hot issue. I think this minimum wage is always going to continue to be an issue where possible. Energy and how we want to manage our partnership with Excel Energy will be of consideration, and wildfire mitigation and disaster assistance and response. I think will be significant, given the deplorable snowpack that we have this year. I think everybody is heightened around what we can anticipate this fire season.
Now, staying on the city council, what does a day in the life look like for a city council member?
It varies every day. I laugh because for the first 2 years, I did time audits. And so then I would see how much of my time. I stopped doing time audits when I saw how much time I was spending on it. I also just had a good feel. So essentially, I divided my time up between specific council meetings. So you can anticipate 4 hours essentially on Thursday nights is pretty static. There's also committee assignments, so you have a few of those. Then you have the readings. The packets can range anywhere from 200 to 300 pages every week between the study session and the actual meetings. So reading. Then you have meetings with constituents and partners, and that could take up a good amount of time. So yeah, it varies from day to day. I mean, every week I post on Adams for Boulder what my schedule is, so that folks can, if they have opportunities to engage with me in community. This week is Colorado Climate Week, so tomorrow all day I'll be at the University of Boulder, where we'll be hosting workshops throughout the day on different aspects of climate resilience. And just as a city council representative, I think it's critical that I am also doing professional development. So that happens. Next week, I'm going up to Fort Collins I'm going up to Loveland for the Northern Water Spring Symposium, which is another all-day symposium on northern water. And as many may know, or I hope they know, that 1/3 of our drinking water comes from the Colorado River, which is northern water.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be professional development. It could be me meeting with people in person, at the library, online. As I said, it's 20 to 30 hours, pretty solid. Me going to the farmer's market and hanging out and talking with community members.
That's my favorite. I feel like that's the center of our community.
It's and the library.
Oh, the library. Okay, I rarely
yeah.
go to the library.
I see a ton of people at the library.
Okay.
But yeah, the farmer's market is awesome. But that's where the heart of it is to me. It's not just being at the meetings or even when people want to meet with me, because so many people don't know that they can do that. So to me, being out in community and just not making a big deal, but just being a community member, and I think, somebody else who does that great is our mayor, Aaron Brockett, does a great job of being outside of his own community, that his own family or, core friend group. I see him in different types of groups, different, types of meetings, at the cycle meeting, he rides his bike. He's not, you know what I mean? I just love that I see him out, or Ryan Schuhart when I saw him at the mosque. It's like, yes, I want to see us, out in all of the different pieces that make our communities the mosaic that it is. Even if it is, disproportionately, there are ethnic minorities and ethnic majorities, there's still kind of, I like to say, a bubble of bubbles. And it's really important that we go outside of just the folks that we would traditionally encounter in our day-to-day life.
Well, I'm happy to hear that about you getting out and mixing it up so much. That's the part of Boulder that I love the most. This is the most community I've ever felt, and I'm part of the natural products community, and that's why I came here. We've got a world-class natural products community here. And Aaron Brockett was on the podcast, and he said that it's really a superpower just having the title of mayor, because people are like, whoa, the mayor's here, but no one could really point him out. nobody knows who the mayor is. They're just excited that the mayor is here.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, and and that can go to people's heads too. Like,
Sure.
oh, the mayor's here. And so we were at the Boulder Strong honoring those who lost their lives at the King Super shooting and honoring their legacy. And there was like a little 5-year-old, and she had her little plate of food. And we got there early, so the mayor's on the other side. I'm like in the back. There aren't a lot of people, and there's no other adults in this row, and she's by herself. And her food falls on the ground, like the little fruit and everything. And the mayor's sitting there, and I'm in the back, so I can't like go to her and try and fix it. So I'm like, Mayor, Mayor, and he looks like I said, can you help her? And he looks over, he sees a little girl. He says, oh yeah, and he goes over there, goes on one knee, picks up the food off the ground and puts it on her little thing and throws it away for her and makes sure that I just thought, that's our mayor getting his hands dirty. You know what I mean? Nothing is above him, right?
Yeah.
He is of community, and I do appreciate that about him.
Yeah, and he was a successful business owner and had a great team and had very low to no turnover. And yeah, I really enjoyed connecting with him. What type of leadership qualities would you want to see in like a really successful council? Like, what type of person does it take to be really successful in this role?
Well, I would love to see. I mean, I go back to Brene Brown's trust anatomy of trust. So, and she talks about in it integrity. Gotta be a person of your word. I'm sorry. If you tell me that you love all the people, then I'm expecting you to act like you love all the people, and that's just how it's gonna be. So having integrity,
all the
walking
way
your talk.
all the way to being just on time for things. That's the number one area that I think people slip with integrity. And then knowing how to clean it up, putting structures in place so that doesn't happen again.
Again, failure is inevitable. It's how we respond. That's really So having integrity, being transparent. So, again, not trying to hide things over here but just, being transparent with information, with time, those kinds of things. And then being willing to be held accountable, to the public. And as I said, it's not just the community, not just our human community, but our more than human kin is also a community that we are responsible for representing. And I'm hopeful that we have more people who recenter the rest of the ecosystem. And dare I say, more so than humans right now. We've centered humans for a long time, and this is what we got. It's time that we make water a priority. And if it's not a climate benefit, we shouldn't be doing it. Like the Pete Seeker said, if I can't recycle it or fix it or repair it, or that it shouldn't exist, or I should tax it out of production. That's what I think. I hope that we have leaders that are courageous enough to make decisions that aren't popular but are necessary. And I say that because the Emancipation Proclamation was an executive order. It would have never, ever passed popular vote. Never. Not with who was voting at the time. It would have failed. It required an executive order. And so I'm not suggesting that I want a fiefdom or an oligarch, but I am saying, going back to the great law of peace, if it's better for nature, then that's what we need to be doing. Even if that means I have a lower bottom line.
Yeah, I believe that very much. I believe that that's where I feel the most connected with God, is when I'm in nature. That's where I get centered. That's where I get clear. That's where I refill my cup. And we have beautiful nature here. We're very, very blessed.
Absolutely. It is one of the reasons that I live here. I moved here. And as I said, if anything, the relationship has deepened. I feel a higher sense of honor that I get to live amongst the trees here and live with the trail and the creek it's just awesome.
Who are your role models? Who are your mentors?
I would say my ancestors are big for me. I've been really deepening my ancestral relationship. My mom just passed recently, and so I have a recent ancestor to add to the ancestral plane. Pensfield Tate, who is our first black mayor here in Boulder. I believe he was elected to mayor in 1973 or 74. But he actually was the one who recommended that we do the promenade for the Pearl Street Promenade and get cars out and have that be a place. So he was
Great
really
decision.
actually big on that. But what actually he did face a recall though because he was an advocate for marriage equality at a time when Boulder was not quite as blue as it is now.
Wow.
So again, just that there's more of a willingness to do some of the climate work sometimes than the human rights work, and that's also been consistent. But Pennsville Tate for sure is somebody. Shirley Chisholm is another. Unbought, Unbossed is her autobiography. It's very thin. I can't recommend it highly enough. But that Unbought, Unbossed, as we're watching, whether it be the Epstein files or other truths that are coming to light on who's been bought by whom, I have more and more appreciation for Unbought and Unbossed, which is what her autobiography was called. And then I would say Prince, because I love music. And if there was an artist, a musical artist that had the most impact on me, I'm also a singer and a songwriter, and it would be Prince. And not just because of the music that he did and produced and created, but what he did behind the scenes that nobody heard about, like paid for Rosa Parks' house after the Little Caesars guy died, or like, you know what I mean? Like there's all these things that he helped support and be a part of that no one ever knew about. And this goes back to what I was saying about, what can people do? Everything. It's not about what you want to be known for, or what can you do? What can you contribute, right? Like, going back to how do you get in right relationship with yourself? If you have too much of anything, that means somebody has not enough. It's not, don't make it complicated, right? And so I look for people like him. Fred Hampton is another more recent one for me. I've always been a fan and appreciative of him, but as a leader, I think back to that Rainbow Coalition right now. Not the one in the 80s with Jesse Jackson, which was the second. The first was Fred Hampton, and that was a 21-year-old building bridges between Black community, Latino, Latina, Hispanic communities, and poor white communities. Like, that's the goal. Like, how did you do that? Like, I want to lean in to how do we find each other's hearts again? Because we've had to be trained. There has to be $1 trillion effort to divide and conquer us. That's how strongly we want to relate to each other. Like, even if you put two people who don't speak the same language, they will find a way to communicate with each other. It is human nature. We are one species, and we work so hard.
And we want to help each other.
Oh, so bad. That's why you have to make so many laws against it. Like, there were laws against teaching Black people how to read. We had to make a law.
Yeah.
Because people want to do it. I want to grow food for you. I want to be in relation with you. And I have to, if I'm an oppressor, come up with as many ways as possible to make you doubt yourself, to make you question what you innately know inside to be true, that we are one.
What is the energy of that oppressor? Why be an oppressor?
Oh, you're going to get me in trouble in this podcast.
We don't have to talk about that.
No, I'm just saying.
Okay.
These are facts. These are things that are on the record.
Yeah.
I just am saying.
Yeah.
I'm just pointing them out.
Okay.
So, have you heard of the ISIS papers?
No.
Oh, this is good stuff.
Okay.
So, who is the woman's name? All right, well, if you just look up ISIS papers, you're going to find a woman.
You will put it on the screen.
She's a doctor. A scholar. But essentially, her thesis was that melanated people, as they started to migrate, or humanoids, or whatever they would have been called at the time, started migrating out of the, Horn of Africa, or, beyond the equator, which made them darker skinned to have to be able to be on the equator, that level of heat and sun exposure. There was a mutation, an albino mutation that created white people. And so her thesis is that because of this mutation, that minority group felt like they needed to dominate other groups because if they didn't, they would be erased and wouldn't exist anymore as white people, just from a number perspective. So that's her thesis, but it is certainly an interesting one. The idea being there's a fear that they will be extinct, so then I have to dominate them.
Wow. It's in the nature.
because they're a mutation in and of itself. I mean, you know, and this is why Malcolm X says that Black women are the most oppressed group. I don't like doing oppression Olympics, but because we have the blueprint of humanity in our DNA, so I need to destroy that or keep that down so that I can keep doing this other, or what is it, race replacement theory or something, which is what our white supremacist Klan people, who are whatever they're called now, are doing. They're trying to make sure that they have enough white people. So I need to make sure that, people are not allowed to have babies, which is what happened to Fannie Lou Hamer. And Black women in Mississippi were, their capacity to have children was removed of them without their knowledge because we wanted to not have as many Black children because I needed more white children. So that is a theory that is interesting. I also, as a OG yogini, remember I met a woman at yoga teacher training. So last year celebrated my 30th anniversary of doing the yoga practice.
Wow.
And ego. Just the brain and how it forms, and what gets fed gets nurtured, right? What gets watered on gets cared for, gets nurtured. And I feel like the ego of that individualist, I can think my way out. I'm not in any relation with anything. I
disconnected
can,
from feeling and body.
I'm going to do a study about this, and I'm going to innovate and make this thing so that I don't have to just use my regenerative brain, right? I mean,
or feel my emotions.
I'm going to numb it. I'm going to do anything.
It's been a real gift on this podcast. I've felt many emotions with you. You're very in touch with your emotions, and thank you. That's a real gift to be able to share that with others. It's been a gift for me to get to feel so much emotion that you've brought in.
Thank you. I'm a Cancerian.
You're what?
I'm a Cancerian born in the sign of Cancer.
Oh, okay.
So we're very emotional people.
Okay. You've pulled me in many times.
Very emotional people.
It's beautiful. Thank you. It's a gift to me to feel in that kind of a way. I grew up in a very conservative Christian home where it was, and I love my family, but it was like you get one emotion, and that is glad. There's no mad. There's no sad. There's those emotions are bad and wrong. So I'm in the practice of still feeling into those emotions. I go very intellectual, and I try to maybe escape them because I have a story of wrongness around them. But I've gotten to feel that sadness with you several times, and it's a real gift to me as I'm in the practice of learning those feelings.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, I'm an emotional person, and you have this deep knowing about things. And for me, the fact and the intellectual part has been the validator, like, oh, that's easy. Yeah, I was feeling this thing, and then there's valid and reliable evidence that supports that. Which is just, our science. And I just say our because I think of traditional ecological knowledge as well that hasn't been codified in the ways that we have, but certainly has been known. I think back to African civilizations well before Christ was born, who understood the stars in ways that the Greeks and their crew stole from many, many decades later. So.
Well, you're very self-expressed. It's easy to trust you because you feel like an open book, and you just share very authentically.
You will know how I feel about something. You will never have to guess.
Well, there's a stereotype in politics where it's very rehearsed, very polished, very hey, you could say anything publicly, and then behind the scenes, it's the opposite.
Yeah, no.
That doesn't from your voting record that I was looking at, where you're many times standing alone, to how you're sharing now. You certainly have my endorsement.
Well, thank you. And again, our government is supposed to. I moved here from Washington, D.C., which our license plates there said taxation without representation, right? Because we pay taxes and we don't have a vote in Congress. It was very bizarre to me. And that's when I knew, oh, well, we're still got some work to do on this whole democracy thing. But, we have never had a true democracy in this country, in any place, anywhere, in our current government, since the way that it's been structured. And as I said, the brouhaha that we're seeing at the federal level, I'm hopeful, is an invitation to remind us that we're not done here, right? It's only been 250 years, not even. It's 250 years in July, right? And no democracy has lived past that. And so I say, if we're going to live past that, we need to come up with a new American dream that doesn't require haves and have nots, that doesn't require exploitation and extraction of our land, water, soil, humans, others. Yeah, those are the things that that keep me in play there.
Well, there's we're in the final probably quarter, 15 minutes here.
Oh, okay.
And my girlfriend, now fiance, recently engaged. I'm going to get married here in Boulder in August. And
Oh, good. Have children. We need them.
yes, yeah, we plan. She really wants to.
I
I do
didn't know that was the
too.
thing, but we need the numbers. So.
Yeah, we need them. Let's see. She shared something with me. She got a mailer from Stop Anti-Semitism Colorado last year that said not to vote for you. What do you make of that?
I would like to say, I would like to think that it was a misunderstanding. And I'm hopeful that the authors of that and the members of those groups who felt compelled to label me an anti Semite when I spoke the truth about what that fire thrower said as he was hurting our community members. And he wasn't just talking about Jewish people. He was talking about Zionism and ethno-state that we have witnessed over the last 2 years with the funding and support of the United States and the city of Boulder commit war crime after war crime. Amongst the many hats I've worn, being a director of the Model UN program and working with the State Department was one of them. I am crystal clear on what those laws are, and I know that we have broken them. And it was my responsibility as a representative of our city to say all of the facts. As I said, my job is not to make people comfortable. My job is to say the truth and stand right next to you to face the consequences of that truth, recognizing that we decide as a community who we want to be. And so I say that letter came out last year when there wasn't as much information that's available now. And I'm hopeful, and I'm always open to meet with any representative from that group so that we can have a dialogue with each other and not to argue anti-Semitism versus Zionism. This is more than isms. This is about who do we want to be as a species here in the city of Boulder, understanding that how we relate to each other here is interconnected with a mutual destiny with others around the world. I was sad to see my name in it, but as an educator, remember I told you it takes trillions of dollars to divide and conquer us. It takes an effort. It takes isolation. It takes half-truths. It takes misinformation. It takes people fighting over whose Holocaust was worse. I refuse to get into an argument about whose Holocaust, whose genocide was worse. That's a distraction. Our opportunity for survival comes in our willingness to have the hard conversation in the short term, face to face, over the long-term dysfunction that we are seeing right now. So that's what I have to say about that letter. And I will remain eternally hopeful that those groups will work with all of us who want liberty and justice for all.
I think that's a beautiful place to end this.
Nice.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Where can people learn more about you, connect with you, see your schedule and your shares, from your music to your policy ideas?
Absolutely. So Adams for Boulder on Instagram is my unofficial site for all things City of Boulder. So things that I'm thinking, where my schedule is. opportunities to engage and provide feedback or be involved in community decisions that are being made. We have the budget cycle coming up, so I'm especially hopeful that we have a lot of community engagements. We're going to have some hard trade-offs. I hear you, South Boulder Rec Center, and yes, I want that too. But what are we not going to do? And that's going to be one of the hardest conversations that we've had to have as a community. So that's going to be big. And then professionally at the Mukuyu Collective, and I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn and Uproot and Kahar. Power, Privilege, and Paperwork it's making its way into stages and theaters near you. So please stay involved. And that was an outgrowth of the work with in the West Bank and Palestine and issues of liberation and democracy. As I said, the city council has levers to do stuff, but as I said, each of us have levers and skills and talents to contribute. So that's where you can find me there.
And have you announced anything yet for running again?
I have not. So stay in tune.
Great.
At the Adams for Boulder.
If you decide to run again, would love to have you back on the podcast and help you share your message and thoughts in that way.
Well, I definitely appreciate that. I'm giving that a lot of thought.
Great. And I'd also like to give you a gift. So I have a natural products company. We do freeze-dried microgreens. I have a broccoli version and a blend of broccoli, radish, and red cabbage. Use as a garnish to sprinkle on your eggs, salad, sandwich. Is broccoli, microgreens, or sprouts ever been a part of your life?
Yes. Yeah, only microgreens a little bit from the farmer's market. That's because you see them all there. There's a different kind. It's kind of like mushrooms.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I want to be down.
Yeah.
And so, but I've never had this powder situation, so I'm pretty.
Freeze dried retains up to about 98% of all the good things while extending the shelf life from about a week to now over 2 years.
Oh, this is going to be you're in the right business. Thank you. We're going to need this. This is. We need to grow more food so that we can do things like this, so that we can make sure that people are getting the nutritional density, but not at the ecological expense. Advertising for you, but
no, please do advertise.
I'm psyched.
I was creating space for the advertisement.
It's really, really important. I don't know what to tell you, and I will leave you with this uncomfortable truth: we can live without cars. I love you all. I mean, I have a car and everything. I drove a car to get here, but we cannot live without food and water. Yeah. And I just going back to needs versus wants, and I'm hopeful we can focus on the needs. So thank you for a rich and nourishing conversation that was like needs focused and not just want focused.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, y'all. Ciao for now.